Hello, everybody. Another edition here of Newrez Voices. Man, I am so excited about this one. I could barely sleep last night speaking to David Kakish here, who David and I met earlier this year. This is 2025 at the golf tournament in Phoenix. And I was so taken with your story of how you've built your business and the creativity and the entrepreneur. It's everything that I love about our business, candidly. And so having you here with us today is awesome. So with that said, welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you guys.
So, hey, let's just start. Like I said, I mean, I just thought your story was so amazing of kind of how you came to join this industry, and how quickly you've ramped it up. So, can you just share with the audience a little bit about how you came to this point as being one of America's leading loan consultants?
Yeah, it's funny. Success sometimes is accidental when you're not focused on success. I was a pastor for 17 years and served local churches and some big, some small, and did that for a long time. And it was awesome. And I'm thankful for that time. And we just started to get to a point where our family, we just started to feel tapped. Just a lot. It was a lot. I mean, one church we served was 10,000 members. And so I have 4 kids and just hardly got to see them and just a lot. And so we started to feel, my wife and I started to feel kind of worn down and knew we didn't have much gas left in the tank. So we knew that we could take our time to figure out what was next. And so we just talked about it a lot. And I told her, I can't do a W-2 salary. Like I work too hard. I will maybe get a cost of living raise, but I'm going to work my butt off no matter what I do. And so I want to sell something in sales. I'm good with people. And then I was like, okay, well, if I sold something, I don't want to convince someone to get something they don't need. So I want it to be a life necessity. So what are the necessities of life? Kind of went through that. I'm like, okay, housing, obviously. And I was like, maybe I'll do real estate. And then again, just thought through it. I'd, be scrolling through Zillow sometimes when we were looking for houses. And so I was like, no, okay, what's the other side of housing? It's like mortgages. Maybe I'll do mortgages. And just being in pastoral ministry, either ministry or military, you move a lot. So we lived in 9 states. I bought houses quite a bit. I hated the mortgage process. I hated it. And I was every mortgage broker's nightmare too, because I would pit them against each other and do this and that. And I told my wife, I was like, we could do it different. We could engineer it in a way that we would have wanted to experience it. And so I got licensed in August of 22, right as rates hit 6%. And it's been fun. So August this year will be my 3rd year, and it's been a good time so far.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you talked about service as a pastor, and I think about this a lot just in our career, like how do I serve and what is the purpose of what we do? And I think housing is really an important service to the community, but also the way that we serve others can inspire them, make their day better. I mean, there's so many ways to serve. So I just think it's a really cool way of the way that you've kind of transitioned from one kind of service to another, and your mission of making an impact in people's lives really is unchanged in a lot of ways.
It's so funny because this is our industry. We live and breathe it. Hey, I need this income doc. Hey, I need this. But sometimes we forget from the consumer perspective, this is exciting, stressful, nerve-wracking. They're having second thoughts and gosh, no GFCI in the bathroom plug. Should we buy this house? There's so much stress. And so when we think from the consumer perspective first, and then engineer a process that puts their feelings, their emotions, their desires at the forefront, I think it can create an entirely different experience that they've maybe ever had in this realm. And we get that a lot. I was late to start a Google page. I started one in January of last year, but I think we have over like 150 5-star reviews. And I told my wife, the second we get a 4-star, I got to hang it up. We got to earn 5 stars every time. So
Yeah,
it's
I
been
love
fun.
that. Yeah, the second we get a 4-star, yeah. And look, I say that to our team all the time as well. I mean, feedback is a gift, and every review we should be striving for that +1 delivery to get the 5-star, and when we get 4, to understand it, what we can learn from it, what we can do better, how we can make it up. So I love that as well. So let me ask you, you you talked a little bit about numbers before we jumped on the call, which is probably not what most people would think of when they think of pastors. So, you know, you need to know your numbers to be great in this business. But, on that pastoral route, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are the things that made you a great pastor and that kind of had fueled that passion you had in um, that line of work, that mission that have translated over and kind of served you in being a great loan consultant?
Oh man, that's a good question. First thing I will say, it's a lot easier to interpret Fannie and Freddie guidelines than it is to translate Greek and Hebrew every week for my sermon. So that's one. So I don't know, as a pastor, you're with people in their like realest and rawest moments. You know, no one calls a plumber just to see how they're doing. No one calls a pastor just to catch up. I mean, they're in crisis. They lost their job. They don't know how they're doing. Tragedy has struck. They're struggling with something. And you get to see people in moments of grief and joy, like with all the facades of normal human experience stripped away. You see the real souls. And just seeing that for 17 years, you kind of get an understanding of how people work and what makes them tick. And you learn to listen and hear beyond. There was a line in one of my kids' movies, the Kung Fu Panda. It said, a wise person hears one word and understands two, or something like that. And you know what I mean? Like the beauty of words that we can express what we mean. The tragedy of words is that we typically don't. And so sometimes when you hear some trepidation in a question, the question's not the question. Hey, what's going on right now? What are you guys feeling? No loan officer is going to ask them what they're feeling, what they're struggling with. We have a reputation so far, and this is one of the ways we've been able to scale. I will not issue a pre-approval letter unless I am 100% certain we can close it. Even if I'm 99% sure, I will say I'm 99% sure, but hold on, let me send it to a scenario desk. Let me get cleared from underwriter with one of our lender partners to make sure that this is going to be smooth sailing for you. I don't like surprises. Guidelines don't shift. We know what they are. So when other loan officers will, realtor will call me a week before closing, the loan officer, the file got denied. I'm like, yeah, it's usually because they didn't do the work up front, typically. And so I want my word to be my word. Hey, we pre-approved you. You are good to go. We've already collected. We already got your gift letter from your dad who's going to give that gift. Like we want everything buttoned up. If we do that up front, once they get under contract, we're asking them for a lot less. The timelines is less stressful. Like, hey, this condition came up. We weren't expecting it. So that's one of the ways. What I mean, when you understand how people tick, you can engineer the process in such a way that serves them in all the right moments. When they're under contract, we're in go mode as loan officers, right? Like, okay, give me the contract, give me this. Did we celebrate with them? Hey, congratulations. This is so exciting. How are you guys feeling? And so how do you do that at scale? I'm sure we're going to get into that because relationships and being personable in transactions is hard to do at scale.
So, I mean, there's a ton to unpack there, and I'll just start with what you just said. Like, how do you do it at scale? Because I think that's, the trap of so many loan consultants is that when things are going well, it becomes super transactional, and that's where we lose people because, while successful loan consultants, successful people may have a lot going on, the person on the other side, this is one of the most important things in their life. Like they're not going to do this many times in their life, and they're going to remember how it ended, how the closing went, all these kind of things. So how do you do that? How have you kind of uniquely owned that for yourself?
Okay, so this frustrates a lot of people because one time when I was a pastor, this guy would ask me a lot of deep theological questions. We met once a week, and he said, "Can you ever just give a straightforward answer?" And I said, well, it depends on the question, So you asked a simple question and I do want to answer it. I really do, but maybe I can answer it from a different angle. When I first started, rates were terrible. I didn't have leads. I didn't really know a whole lot about loans, but I am a systems and processes kind of oriented guy. And so, I explored that and we can get into it, but I used Charlie Munger's version of inversion theory, if this makes sense. What would it take to break it? What would create a terrible experience? And because I get asked that question a lot from a lot of us, how do I get more business? How do I could do this or that? And I'm going, you're asking the wrong question. You know, you want a shortcut, a magic bullet that's all of a sudden going to 10x. There's not one, right? It's all the things. But when you sit down and say, what could I do to intentionally sabotage my entire reputation to ensure that no one wants to work with me again? And it sounds like a stupid, simple question, but you could say something out loud. Hey, I wouldn't communicate. I wouldn't. Perfect. Write that down. Wouldn't communicate about what specifically? When would they get most frustrated? And I literally would write it down and broke down the transaction from lead reception to post close, every single step of what I could do to completely botch this whole thing. And that sounds like a morbid exercise. And what the heck are you doing? The goal of that is if I know what would break my business, and then step by step, build my business with that in the rear view mirror, I'm knitting the most beautiful sweater inside out. I'm building an unbreakable business. And that was the goal, even when I had no transactions. And every transaction is a learning experience. We have a rule I tell my team all the time. If we get asked the same question more than once by different people, our process needs to adjust. Because this has been verbalized, but how many people didn't ask it, but wonder it? We want to get ahead of it. And so when we did it that way, there was so much that I would sit there and type it out, you know, and I'm like, well, I can't do that. Can I template this? And so we started kind of exploring that, and I would write template messages for every part, and then did keyboard shortcuts where all my devices are programmed, where if I just type in, you know, this phrase, it will autocorrect to this. Can I replace that with a video? So I have a video of me with a background of like fireworks going off. And I'm like, hey, it's your birthday. I did this fireworks show just for you. I didn't say names. I didn't do this. And now it's automated to go out to every client. I didn't record it for every client, but it goes. Now you would say, what if I send it to them next year? Well, I made 5. One for 2024, one for 2025, and next year we'll cycle it through. So no one's going to get the same one twice. So little things like that, when you think through the process and you break it down, and then you engineer your entire workflow to address it in a way that is scalable. And scalable is a buzzword. Scalable means different things to different people. But that's my long way of answering your question, David.
Well, and I mean, part of it, what I hear you saying in a lot of ways is the way to get more business is to treat every loan like it's your only business, like to make that customer feel like they're the only one in the whole world. They're the only one you're thinking about on their birthday. And that's, I think that's how people want to feel. Like they don't want to feel like they're a number or part of some faceless process or whatever. They want to feel like a personal connection and the trust and confidence, like you say, that, hey, this person's thought about all these things. I don't have to worry about the pre-approval coming through. David knows exactly how this is going and knows me personally.
You know what's really cool about what you just said is it's true. And I literally emphasize that all the time. I want every client to feel like they're our only client. If you ever say, sorry, I didn't get back to you quickly, we're so busy right now. I hated when that was communicated to me. And that was part of my inversion theory. I remember I was on customer service call or calling someone and they said something like that to me. And I was like, I would write it down. Don't like that. We're not going to do that. So when you can make every client feel like they're your only client, and then maybe they see my end of month closing post. And so we closed, 15 transactions that month. It means more to them that they felt like they were our only client, even in spite of the fact that we were that busy, because they know what it takes. And so you get double credit when that happens.
The other thing I was going to bring up, and I feel like, in your process, you probably have this somehow built, is that I feel like in this industry, sometimes somebody closes a loan and it's like, hey, great, congrats. And you move on to the next one. And really, like, that is a huge moment for people to close on a home, not just your first home, any home. Like, this is where you make memories and your family is, and there's so many things associated with it. And it's just a major miss, I think, in a lot of folks' process not to share in that and be a part of that emotional connection, because it's a super emotional part of people's lives.
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you this, it is difficult for me because that is my mindset, David, to encounter some clients who do treat the lending process strictly as a commodity. We're just a service. They don't want a relationship. They don't want, hey, give me the best rate. You know, that's their mindset, and they will show. They don't want to have any interaction with you except like get me the money as cheap as possible. I actually struggle with those clients because I'm so used to being able to connect relationally. You know, what is funny is as much as they don't seem to want that or care for that, after experiencing the process the whole way through and we close them, whether they knew they wanted it or not, they do feel close. Newrez, for example, by and large, you guys hold servicing on your loans, correct?
Yes, correct.
Is that commonplace for lenders, or do a lot of them
No,
sell servicing?
that's right.
If other lenders sell servicing, so far as the client knows, I'm the lender. I'm not. I'm a broker. I'm broke. You guys are the lenders. I don't have the money to give them. But so far as they understand, I am the lender. And so any questions they have about servicing or whatever, it's coming to me. If I know that, I don't know, a vast majority of wholesale lenders do not hold servicing, they will sell the loan. The client's going to be a little confused because, hey, you know, the first couple payments I sent to this and now this. And I know that the servicer who's buying that loan, by and large, will likely hit up that client and ask them. So I thought about that process. And so we have scheduled 2 weeks after closing, an email comes through for me. And on the subject line, it says, hey, your loan will probably be sold. Here's what that means for you. And it's written in almost like a clickbaity way because like, okay, wait, this sounds important. And I go through it. I'm like, who would buy? Why doesn't a lender want to hold servicing? Well, rates are high. They suspect that there might be refis in the future. And the longer they could hold servicing, the more they could make. So if they think that you might refi soon, they're going to sell the servicing. Who would buy it? Someone who wants to hit you up for a refi. Here, my dad's on that and da da da. And so, and I'm just teeing it up from now. You will get hit up with refi opportunities from your servicer. This is by and large the type of companies that buy servicing. This is by and large the type of offers they make. Don't worry about it. We got you. We do refis. And so I use Arrive as an LOS. Shout out to Harish. And in Arrive, we can do something. It's called rate alerts. So David, say I closed your loan. I know what your rate is. It was a purchase, 20% down, such and such. After closing, I can set up a rate alert for your exact loan scenario for a refi, mark what rate I want it to search for, and it will just search all of our lenders' pricing. And when it pings, it sends me a message. And then I can reach out to the client. Hey, I'm not sure if it's time to refi. If we did, it would look like this. So then I just white label that and say, hey, we have what did I call it? Like Rate Watch set up for you. An AI algorithm that's going to search every lender's rate sheet that we work with to find an opportunity that might make sense for you to refi. So just ignore all the stuff that's going to come from your servicer. We got you. We want to make it bespoke yet templated.
Yeah, that is very cool. I did not know that Arrive did that. That's a cool feature. I gotta, yeah, like say, shout out Harish. That guy's thought of everything. Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, on the point of kind of relationships that we're talking about here, I was recently at a conference with a lot of loan consultants across the country, and they were talking about, the value of being hyper local and this superpower of being close to people and seeing people face to face and going to the soccer game and all that. And I believe that is valuable. At the same time, one of the things that has stuck and kind of lived rent free in my head ever since we spoke was just how successful you've been not being hyper local, like not knowing anybody when you started in your market, and being totally remote and yet building this incredible business. So can you talk a little bit about like kind of how you've overcome what a lot of people would see as a challenge in building a business, and particularly a purchase business?
Dude, I love that question. And I'm going to start with um, the why, and then we can get to the answer. I also hear that a lot. Be hyper local. The most money you're going to make is where you live, right? Interact, be a staple in your community, get known, sponsor the kids' baseball team, such and such. This is my personal opinion. You know, what do they say? A penny for your thoughts, and then you give your 2 cents. Someone's making a penny in this transaction. So, anyways, I think the obsession on being hyper local is a hyper limited perspective. Almost every loan officer I know is jealous of the real estate agent's commission check when they see the Alta. But almost every realtor I know is jealous that I can write a loan in Washington, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio at the same time from my couch in my sweatpants. And the obsession on being hyper local flushes away, I think, one of the greatest advantages we have in the lending industry as opposed to, say, real estate. I don't have to drive 2 hours to show you this fee worksheet. They do to show you that house. And so once I realized that, and obviously necessity is the mother of all ingenuity. When I got licensed, the day I got licensed, I lived in Washington State. I didn't know where I was going to live after we hung it up in the pastoral ministry. And then it just so happens we had the opportunity to move to Alabama. I didn't know I was going to move to Alabama. We just did. Well, the problem is my brokerage wasn't licensed in Alabama. So I'm new. I don't know anyone. And I cannot originate where I live. I did not have the option of being hyper local. And so, yes, I arrived at there's a way to grow without being there, but I wanted to start with the why. You could say my success is just, a result of my circumstances, but I wanted to start with the why that makes sense. The greatest advantage we have is that we don't have to be hyper local, that we can grow in multiple markets. And so I think hyperlocal thinking really does throw away our greatest strength. And we want to build something that geography can't touch. I mean, if I could say it in a nutshell, that's what I want to say. So how do we do that? I think honestly, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. We've heard that a million times, and I believe it. And if that is true, they want to work with people they know, like, and trust, then the zip code doesn't matter. I know, like, and trust you, David. We don't live in the same city. Here we are talking as if you're a screen room away. So I don't think zip code matters if you know, like, and trust someone. And so I think it requires a few things to grow outside of hyper locality. And I'm not saying throw locality out the window. By all means, do this. It's this, and be you. Be the real you on social media. Highs, lows, family, business, wins, losses, be you, be real, be honest, work hard. And when you are a person that someone knows, likes, and trusts, and they had a good experience, I have found that the last act of joy is telling someone, celebrating it with someone. It's the reason why if I'm at a sports stadium and my team scores and I'm at that game by myself, I want to high five the person sitting next to me. I don't know their name. Joy has to come out. It has to come out. And so I realize people get excited about telling someone about a new restaurant they tried out. People get excited about telling, I found an honest mechanic. Oh man, I came in, told my brakes were making noise. He told me there's still like 60% life. I can wait 3 months. They want to tell those stories. Step one, like, okay, that's true. And then I don't know if you played this game growing up. We used to play this game growing up called 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon. Did you ever play that game, David?
Yes. Yes.
What is the purpose of that game? Like, what, I say Bruce Willis. You want to like find movies to connect to Kevin Bacon. If I say, even my neighbor, we can use a stranger and say, okay, my neighbor knows this person. That person's lawyer is this person. That, we try to play this game. How do I connect this person to that person in 6 moves? And then you'll hear Todd Duncan say, who do I know that knows someone I want to know? It's, again, just a variation of 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon.
That's right.
So people know people, and people want to celebrate, and people want to tell other people about a good person. And the person who lives down the street from me may have an uncle who's a real estate agent in Seattle, Washington, who he sees at Christmas time, who's talking about work and how the lender botched it. And he says, whatever it is, all of that is always baking in the back of my mind. And so I've done a few things to hijack that. Number one, I send a funny video, something day before Thanksgiving, day before Christmas, always. Why? Because that person's going to be with family from who knows where, right there, and it could get a conversation going. So this is what I mean. I gave you a super long answer for, I don't believe we have to be hyper local. By all means, do it. How do you grow outside of your market? Create experience that's worth talking about and trust that goes beyond the transaction. Who do you know that knows someone you want to know? For example, I wanted to grow in this specific market, and I would look on, there's, software we can use, MMI, Redder, whatever, to look up agents in a zip code and their production. And I made a list of those agents. And then first thing I do is I have that pulled up on my left pane of a window. And on the right, I pull up Facebook. And I'm putting in that agent's name. And I want to say, do we have mutual friends? One of them, the mutual friend was my brother-in-law. So I call my brother-in-law, like, do you know this guy? Yeah, he's one of my best friends. Andrew, why didn't you connect me? He did. I hit it off with that agent. We closed 6 transactions last year. So there's a way to do it.
In a totally different state. Yeah, that's amazing. And so how do you, it sounds like from what you're saying, it's a lot of video. Like, is that kind of one of, tip of your spear, a lot of face-to-face kind of video interaction, or do you have other means of digital or communication mediums, if you will, that you found to be effective?
Specifically client facing or connecting with realtors or just in general?
Let's say realtor connect, just to make it easier, I guess.
Realtor connections early on, I used to cold call. I didn't have any opportunities. And so I cold called the top agents in every market that I was licensed in and was just honest with them. I said, hey, I'm a new loan officer. I always started with humor. I would say, hey, I'm not calling about your car warranty expiring. I am a lender. Don't hang up. I don't want to take you to coffee. I truly, I looked up your production. I see you do tons of volume, and I know you have a lot of experience, and I want to sharpen my saw. And so if you have 2 seconds, I just want to learn from you. There's a line in a Pitbull song that says, if you ask for money, you will get advice. If you ask for advice, you'll get money twice. And so starting the conversation that way, they would definitely stay on the line because they're intrigued. They've not, and I would say, what's something your current lender does that you actually just really appreciate that goes above and on, and they would tell me and I would write it down. What's something they do that frustrates you? Again, I would write it down, but I'm also creating an opening now to kind of get in. Oh yeah, that's why we X. What's funny is I always tell LOs when they call me and I do any consulting, like, play the long game. Unless you want a really short career, play the long game. You don't need to close them right away. Make an impression. Tell them about what you do. Don't pressure them. Friend them on Facebook, Instagram. They'll see your posts. You'll see their posts. Play the long game. And I know that is counterintuitive because so many, and I just say, ask for the business. I couldn't disagree more with that mindset. I don't ask for the business. I have to earn the business. I have to add enough value where they want to give me business. Case in point, there was an agent that I have been talking to, working on a relationship with for 1.5 years now. 1.5 years, just the long game. And she did, I think, 26 million in buyer side transactions last year. But I've never asked for business. And yesterday she called me. She's like, okay, you win. Sending you a lead, such and such. And I've never asked for business. I just see she'd post up and on a listing like, hey, you know what? I can make you a flyer for that. Just constantly adding value, being helpful, being pleasant. And then they get to know your personality just being friends on social media and seeing a family man, putting the client first. They get to see that consecutively. So video works, but yeah, there's myriads of ways to go at it.
Yeah. And I love that about, yeah, you've said quite a few quotable things, but don't ask for the business, earn the business. That's a great one. So, you talk about video, you've talked about social media, and would love to hear any other tips you have on that. One of the things, just reflecting on our past conversations, that I just thought was so genius that you had shared was this idea of, you found a service that looks for experts to be quoted in different articles. And so, even though maybe some outsiders might say you weren't an expert at that point, you got your name in there, and pretty soon you're being quoted in newspapers and magazines and online, and getting your name out there. And I just thought that's so creative. It's one of, again, like I said in the opening, it's what I love about this business. It's the hustle mentality of people, creative people finding really interesting ways. So, I don't know if there's anything else to comment on that, or just any other kind of gems like that, of just things that maybe you're particularly proud of yourself on, of just thinking of this way that other people have it.
You know, I don't want to be braggadocious, and I have a short-term memory. So I don't know. There might be. The funniest thing, I'm stealing this from someone. I saw this illustration once. Dave, you're going to be a participant for me, and you can steal this too. Can you do me a favor and raise your right hand? Can you raise it higher? And when the guy did that in his speech, he said, "Why didn't you do that the first time?" And I saw that little illustration, and it resonated with me so much, because I can tell you, in this industry, there's a lot of mimicking. People want to see a top producer and go, what are they doing? What LOS are they using? What CRM are they using? Are they cold calling? Are they buying leads? They want to imitate and mimic. And I like to study and just go, what's happening, and break it down. And that illustration was really helpful for me to understand, when I meet true top producers, whatever the situation is, they always raise their hand as high as possible the first time, as if they're going to rip their arm out of the socket. And what I find, others will sit and do this and go, I don't understand why I'm not getting the same results. I'm doing the same thing. And I go, it's that extra 10% that I think makes 90% of the difference.
In my defense, I just wanted my hand to show in the screen the first time.
That's okay. It works every time, though. Everyone will take the path of least resistance.
It's funny. Let me ask you on your social media, though, because I do think that, like you say, being genuine, having a real brand that's interesting, is so important. Like I just saw last week, I was introduced to this younger woman in Tampa who's doing like almost like short comedy sketches, like showing homes. And yes, I thought it was so funny and so creative. And she's already got like 350,000 followers or more by now, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything like, again, that you think you've unlocked in that, or is it just, hey, like you said, you're just sharing your normal life and being you?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on social media. That girl is interesting because I got those videos. I thought they were hilarious. I saw the view count. First thing I did was looked up her production, because my thought is, like, she's being herself. She's being funny. You put out what you will attract. Maybe what I'm saying. I'm like, who does that resonate with? Who thinks that's funny? Will it result in transactions? And so I think social media can be a farce in some ways. When someone is a big social media presence in this industry, we automatically assume success. The beauty of what we have, though, in software is I can look up particularly what they do. I know one guy, I'm actually friends with him, who has many subscribers, and as well, like millions of views on TikTok or whatever, and charges to coach people in social media and such. And I think I closed more transactions and volume last month than he did all year. And so I asked myself the value of views. What is the dollar cost? What's the ROI on views? And in some ways zero. Um, and so even with social media, this is what I meant about just strategy and being intentional. I'm like, well, if I create a viral moment and I have 10 million views, but the views are in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, India, Wyoming, where I'm not licensed, what does that do for me? And so the best advice I ever got was from a buddy who exited a business he built. And he said to me, pick three adjectives that you want people to think of when they interact with you and your business, and let everything you do filter through those three.
I love
And so
that.
I want my social media is an extension of me that corroborates the three adjectives I want to be. I'm not chasing views because views is vanity. What I want to do is showcase who I am, what I do, and what I'm like, because it's a digital business card, a passive digital business card, so to speak. That if someone talks to me, has a good experience, and then they go to my social media, it gives them the opportunity to get to know who I am and what I'm about more so. Um, does that make sense? It's a completely
It
different
does.
paradigm than
It's
most people are using.
Yeah, it's personality per se versus confidence. And like you say, that it should be a reflection of who you are and how you want the customer to feel in some ways. Like you say, that if somebody gets your name and they go visit you on social media, are those the three adjectives, like you say, that are going to make them say, yes, this David is the person that I'm going to feel good and trusting this transaction with, and have the confidence that it's going to happen. So yeah, that it does make a ton of sense. And like, again, I love the idea of the three adjectives and really being clear and intentional about what you're saying and doing and how you're presenting yourself.
It's so interesting. I know a loan officer who, this is not a joke, this is verbatim, had a few posts in a row on Facebook that one of them literally said, I love intense rate shoppers. And then we talked a few months later and he's telling me, like, gosh, my week's been so miserable. I have these people, they're bringing me 12 loan estimates and the rates are changing meanwhile. And so, hey, that quote was from yesterday, but we're actually down 20 basis points today. And he's like, I'm like burning my wheels doing all these like loan comparisons. And then sometimes losing the loan because another lender's making first payment this month or whatever it is. I said, bro, you got back what you put out. Your marketing says, I love intense rate shoppers. You should not be surprised when the avatar that comes back to that are intense rate shoppers.
Well, and I think the other, I feel like that also just, and not to pick on that person, but just, that is kind of the thing that we have to be really careful about in this business right now, because rate shopping as a value prop is pretty easily duplicated with AI and even beyond AI. There's just simple kind of search functions that can do a lot of that. So, so much of what you've built and the things that we're talking about, can't be replaced by a computer or even AI. I mean, you're not going to get that genuine connection and the vulnerability at a lot of levels.
Yeah. When it comes to social media, I think the primary responsibility of a loan consultant with social media is to build trust. And every post either builds trust or it doesn't. And that's what I would say, just period. It builds trust or it doesn't.
Love it. Hey, I thought of a question I was going to ask you earlier, and I just want to loop back to it because it just popped back in my brain. Knowing that you're a numbers person and you're tracking kind of everything at a very detailed level, and you mentioned cold calling, which is kind of most people recoil when they think about cold calling, and you talked about the success that you had. At the same time, I'm sure you had a lot of, hangups and not return calls and all those kind of things. While you were doing that and having success, what was kind of your batting average, if you will, of the number of cold calls made versus the conversations had?
Okay. I don't know if you've heard this story. I've told it a few times publicly, but okay. So I moved to Alabama, wasn't licensed here. I couldn't originate here. I knew I needed agents. I didn't have any agents. Didn't really know many agents. So I'm like, okay, I need to call them. And I'm not scared of talking to people. I'm scared of being an idiot. So I needed to test out, like, what don't I know? What are they going to ask me? So I'm not licensed in Wyoming. I mentioned Wyoming previously. I don't know that I'll ever be licensed in Wyoming. I don't know anyone in Wyoming. So I picked the state of Wyoming and I made a list of like 30, 40 top producing agents in Wyoming and just practice cold calling there. Knowing I'm never going to do business here. I'm never going to, like, I'm going to be a total idiot. I'm going to have my foot in my mouth. I'm going to mess up. I just practice calling. And they were like, well, what do you offer for DPAs? Which is a down payment assistance program. If you didn't know what that acronym stands for, neither did I. So I was like, it's an interesting question. Yeah, we have so many programs. I'd have to look into specific ones. And I would sit there and write down, what is a DPA? I'm telling you, like, I kept calling and calling agents in markets I will never deal with that I won't hurt my reputation long term to find out what works. If I start serious, if I start with a sales pitch, if I start with a joke, how did they respond? And would track the percentages of that. And then also realized huge gaps in my knowledge in the language. When I realized I didn't know what an APR meant. I'm like, okay, I need to research and find out what this acronym is and what is the difference between an APR and an interest rate. And I didn't know that. And I'm thinking someone's going to ask me that down the line. So I use that to really kind of test. And I will never forget the first agent I called in a market I was licensed in was one of the top agents in the Austin market. And he was really gracious with me. I did better than I did on my first like 100 calls, and he stayed on the line for 20 minutes and gave me some good advice, and we talked and hit it off. And I wanted to make sure I had a follow-up after, like, hey, can I sign you up for my weekly market updates? And he signed up. We became Facebook friends. What's funny is now almost 3 years later, I just closed a $1.2 million purchase where he was the listing agent, and he remembered me, and he looked at my social media. He's like, dude, less than 3 years ago, we talked, and now we're starting to converse again. And that's going full circle back to, David, play the long game.
I think the other thing I take away from what you said there is I asked a question that's probably that is too simplistic, because I was kind of asking about your batting average. And the real answer is that your batting average was X when you started, but you kept getting a little better every day so that it was Y, 6 months later, because you learned like you said, start funny, start serious, like how to, what to lead with, and all the acronym and all the things that go with it. You got better incrementally. And so there is no spot in time kind of batting average you could provide for that question. So, yeah.
That's exactly right. But I also answered it in a different way. I told you the first real cold call I made was to this agent. And I just last month closed a transaction where he's the listing agent, and he remembered me. And now we're talking. The percentage, it's still the same at bat, 3 years apart. I haven't struck out yet on that agent. And maybe that's my real point. We want short wins, and I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to operate in the markets I'm in. Whether we did a deal after this call right now, my goal is show you who I am, make a connection, leave a good impression. You will be the listing agent eventually on a transaction. I will have a pre-approved buyer who chooses you we will cross paths again. And when we do, I get to show you who we are. I still see it as the same at bat. So I do track the numbers, David, but I'm just saying the numbers aren't over. My at bat's not done until I retire.
Right. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, awesome. Great stuff. So, look, you've had a ton of success. Like I said, I just think it's so amazing. The kind of trajectory that you've been on over 3 years, a ton of success. At the same time, I'm sure there's some things that you look back on and go, yeah, that didn't work. If you were, going back and talking to David version 3 years ago, is there one lesson or a couple lessons maybe that just stand out more than others of, yeah, I would have done this differently? Not so much maybe in the actual tactics, but just the way you approach the business for somebody who's just getting started themselves and kind of want to model themselves or use you as a model of what's possible.
Regrets. I'm sure I have a few. I will tell you, I think early on I was more concerned with production. I confuse production with profit, maybe. And I mean to say, I know some loan officers who do, ungodly amounts of volume. And then you find out it's because they have a JV with a builder and they're paying out the wazoo to be affiliated with that builder. And so their profit margin on these loans is 50 bips to do a lot of work. And I realized, hey, I want to serve people and I want to provide for my family. Do I want to do more work for less money? I don't. I would rather have time and go play Mario Kart with my 4 kids and take a walk with my wife. And for a long time, I was looking at lists of producers and just going, I need to do what they do. And then as I became friends with some of those producers and found out, like, hey, I don't do as much as you do, but I think we make the same amount.
And the different lifestyle probably goes with that, like you say. Yeah. Different kind of customer too. Like you said, if you chase the people who are the rate shoppers, your conversion rate's probably harder. It's just more frustrating. Look, I mean, everybody picks their path, but like you say, I love that. The productivity over profit, or profit over productivity.
Yeah, I mean, there's an agent in a market, and I remember seeing he's a real estate agent, so not in our industry. And I remember seeing his like numbers. It was crazy, dude. Like just ungodly amount of production in a year. Come to find out, he charges $1,000 flat fee to be your realtor, buyer or seller side transaction. You're looking at, well, this guy did 300 million in purchases last year. Like, oh, he must be a great agent. And you go, but then you find out what's really under the hood. Well, dude, that's a lot of work. So I learned that early on that I don't need to beat Barry Bonds if I just want to get on base. So no, which leads to the second thing I think is for me is when you focus on people and process, profits come.
Numbers and money follow, they do not lead. That's right. And it's a great kind of segue into another question I wanted to ask you, which is about, you've talked a ton about your process and kind of the intentionality you have and kind of how you approach the day, how you approach, every customer and making sure it's a great experience. So what is it about the process for you that you've systematized? Like, is it, the way that you've developed your LOS or your loan origination system and kind of how um, each part of the process is handled? Is it the CRM and how you follow up? Like, what are the things that stand out to you of tools that you've used to make that process work for you consistently every time?
Just like the previous answer, I think people tend to go at this in the wrong direction. They tend to start with, I need a CRM. I need a loan operating system. I need this, and that will solve my problem. And instead, we focused on first, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is it that we're trying to communicate? How do I want this process to go? Then, what tech stack does exactly that? Because I think sometimes people go for the shiny new toy thinking it's the magic bullet. One day, Dave, I will write a book on how to ruin your business. It's going to be all the reverse mindsets. And I'm telling you, I already have like an outline for this and like chapters built out. Like, this is how to ruin your business. Here's a different mindset. And one of them is like the treadmill mindset. They constantly get leads, but there's no end to it. There's no replication. I talked to one guy who did like 100 transactions last year, which is pretty good. And not one realtor ever brought another client to him. I'm going, hey, something's broken in your system. You're on a treadmill where you have to keep filling up a bucket, but it's leaking out the bottom. Like, what's going on there? Um, so I was meaning to say we started the other way around. What is it that we want to communicate? When do we want to communicate that? Does that need to be templated? Can that be automated? And then we started searching. I hate when people start with tech stack. What tech stack are you using? Because it's this versus this. It's a point of pride to tell people we will get one eventually. I don't have a CRM. We've never
Really?
had a
Okay.
CRM. There's not one that does what I want it to do. And I am so OCD for me to take one on and edit it and adapt it and do it, make it what I want. And it's from the onset missing functionality that I need, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's a distraction. So until that exists or I build it from scratch, we don't have a CRM.
Um, well, similar, I mean, I guess taking it then a different direction on process and whatnot, you and I spoke previously kind of about how you were the one person business when you started. Now you have a whole team around you. How have you developed your team? Like, is there a loan officer assistant that's doing certain functions, a marketing person that's helping you with other, like what is the David Kakish team look like right now?
Let me start by saying we hire for character, we train for process, and we measure by ownership, if I could say it succinctly. And I'm happy to repeat that. We hire for character, we train for process, and we measure by ownership. And so I've learned the hard way in my pastoral career, like I don't have a word for it, and maybe you could help me with this, David. Instinct, impulse, this sense of, you could tell by talking to me, I can tell by talking to you, you don't like being bad at things. You don't like not knowing things. You can sense a wiring in people that they will not rest until they figure it out. That to me is the second most important thing I'm looking for. The first is character.
Well, to your point about like what you look for, and when you say that, and I don't know if this is the word, but I know it's a word I use a lot when I talk about like the best people or the most interesting people that I've worked with over my career. The word that I always use is curious. Like, I say that person was the kind of person where I brought something up to them and they came back on Monday morning and they had built something around it. I was like, oh my gosh, like I've had the opportunity to work with several people like that. And like you say, they stand out right away. It's like, oh my goodness, I made a side comment and you went and built something over the weekend. I mean, one, you're, next level smart, but also just you're passionate, you're curious, you want to know more about it and make this business better.
And you have more leadership experience than I do, I'm sure. So, but my hypothesis is you can't train curiosity. You can cultivate it to a degree, but it is innate. I also need the character piece too. And so my team is kind of built organically in the sense of my ops manager was one of the best account executives I've ever had. And just asked her, hey, you know your guidelines. You're great with me. I'm a client, I'm a customer, and I come at you frustrated about a condition and whatever. You're great with handling me and providing answers. I'm like, you have it. Want to come work for me? My best hire was my wife. We work well together. Her being in it with me, I love to tell the story. She is my CRM, by the way. So if you're like, what CRM do you use? I'm like, Ashley Kakish. Now I've helped her. I built an AI bot and trained it on each client's psychological profile, so we know kind of how to interact with them. And then I did poach a senior underwriter from one of our lender partners, and because I wanted my pre-approvals to be rock solid. And
I love
that. She was the one that just separated, and she was fantastic, had great character, could do the job. It's just the pace at which we do it was a lot. And it's hard, it's demanding, and it's weird when it's flexible, Hey, there's nothing for you to do from 9 to 10. Now there's 20 things for you to do from 10 to 11. And I think that was a little different from what she was used to handling being on the inside as an underwriter. So,
look, I mean, we so much appreciate your partnership with Newrez, and as you can tell, I'm a huge fan. So can you talk a little bit, to our team members, to maybe other brokers that are in the market thinking about a lender, what makes Newrez uniquely kind of fit for you? I think every lender brings something a little different, but what is Newrez for you, and how do we help support your business?
I had a different lender. They've been trying to get me to send them loans constantly, and I just has not happened. Their leadership called me and asked me why. And I said, when your account executives call me and say, hey, we can go down to a 600 FICO and we can do these DPAs and we can bankruptcy within this, and even 1 year in self-employment, and I said, all I hear you leading with is our cost to originate are really high. You're going to get over conditioned. Our turn times are slow, and you didn't do your research on who I am and who my avatar is and what I close. Everything that is being peddled to me does not actually fit in my business model and who my clientele by and large is. Newrez is different. Newrez, it started with a relationship, and it is bespoke to me and my needs and what works. And it's a respectful and honest conversation, two ways of like me saying, hey, this would really help me. Hey, we heard you. We're going to work on it. It may take us a minute. And other times, Amanda Schmidt's my AE. Shout out Amanda. She's awesome. She's awesome. And Tori on her team is great. And sometimes they'll say, hey, it would help us if you submitted it this way and gave us a cover letter. Like, hey, partnerships are a two-way street. We can improve too. There are times I say, hey, I got this loan with you right now. I just locked it. Rates went down. This guy's rate shopping me. Like, how do I keep this with you guys? Like, what do we do? It's we're together on the transaction. That has been, say it in a nutshell. Some lenders want to tell me why I need to be sending them loans. Other lenders who I enjoy working with and see a majority of my business say, hey, how can we work together to add value and make this better for you, your team, your clients, and us? It's a two-way street. So Newrez, this is corny. The word that comes to mind is trust. I trust Newrez. If I send in a scenario and provide documentation based on what I show and they say, hey, we can do that, I trust it. I don't have that trust everywhere.
I think about the fact, that you're right. I mean, that's how you and I met, was at an event where we were sitting across the table, broker partners and Newrez AEs and our leadership, and just asking you, what is it that we can do to be better? And you being open to, hey, here's how we can better leverage the technology you're developing, or develop the technology in a different way that fits or is more flexible. And I think you're right. It's that give and take. We all have a different perspective and we all want to grow. So, let's make sure that we're communicating that effectively and actually, all row in the same direction.
The best lender partners are obsessed with clarity. They're allergic to excuses, and they carry equal weights of trust and empathy.
And I can't say enough about it. I'd be repeating myself about just how important that is, and how, the most successful AEs, the most successful brokers have those kind of relationships. Like it truly, like you say, it's a relationship. And the more transactional it gets, the less effective it tends to be. So,
and relationships also mean sometimes the loan's not for you. It doesn't.
That's right.
Not every loan is my loan as well. Hey, do you do renovation, fix and flip? I do not. That's not my specialty. I want to do what I'm excellent at. You know what I mean? Like, and that's okay. We can't be excellent at everything right now. Eventually in time, maybe so though.
Well, it's one of my favorite stories that you hear from our account executives, is that, you've built a relationship to an extent where partners will call us for loans that they know we can't do. They just want to bounce something off of them. Hey, have you ever seen something like this? Do you have an idea? And, we're happy to help, because look, I mean, it's all an investment. We all want to be successful. And, if it's not this loan, look, there'll be ones down the road. Like you say, the batting average, it's never over. So, yeah, it's a great story. So look, I want to wrap up. David, one of the things, we've talked about is that our audience for this show, if you will, is our team members, partners, and leadership is relevant everywhere. And so I always love to hear from people, like, who's the best leader that you've ever worked with? And you don't have to say their name, or you can, but what we're looking for is, what makes great leadership, and how do leaders continue to kind of get better in getting the most out of each of us, which is, I think, what we all want to be, is to realize kind of the best version of ourselves. And I think most people have a story about a leader helping them get there. So anyway, I'd cede the floor to you.
Gosh, best leader I've ever worked with. I haven't worked with her directly, but I know her pretty well. My mom, she's a beast. My parents are both immigrants. My dad's a great dude and just the kindest, nicest guy, and he works hard. My mom, just entrepreneurial, just curious, um, relentless. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And she has like, I think 5 post-grad degrees, just willing to try, willing to work. The best lender partners is they're obsessed with clarity. Say what you mean what you say. They are allergic to excuses. And they do have equal parts trust and empathy. I can trust you and I know you're hearing me. I have some account executives and some lenders, they're never wrong. Even when they're wrong, they're not wrong. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is. Or they want to throw another department under the bus. I'm like, hey, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help you because from the client's perspective, I am you. And I'm going to have to eat all of this. I messed up. I didn't do it. But it's out of my hands. And that's what I mean. They're obsessed with clarity. They're allergic to excuses and they carry equal parts trust and empathy. And the external facing staff positions, account executives, C2 is my back end broker. I love my C2 family. I hear from account executives, how do we get more business from C2? I'm like, C2 is a whale. You can't swallow a whale. And I'm sure this is true with a lot of accounts. Start at the top, build trust with a few, build value with the top, and it will trickle down over time. Your at bat is not over until you retire. Take the long haul, be pleasant, be helpful. Maybe it's questions about loans you can't do today, but tomorrow it is a scenario and you have the products and the pricing is competitive and it works. And once I'm not happy with my internet service provider, most aren't. I don't feel like switching and waiting from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for when they might show up at my house. Point being, when people get in a routine, they tend to stick to it because they want the path of least resistance. I do think that is the case a lot with brokers and the lender partners they use, unless they find that the alternative is that much better. And that's what we want to be always.
Yeah. And I think, wrapping up, that's some of the things you've said, just hanging around the hoop. You play the long game. And then when you do get your shot, that you're actually providing something that's differentiated and impactful, that people remember and want to feel again and feel great about referring to other people. I always use that example. Would I want my mom to work with that person? And if so, then yeah, they're probably pretty good. So that's the standard. I love that we're ending on moms. So this has been awesome. I knew it would be. David, anything else that you want to share, that you feel like, I didn't ask or that, has been particularly important for you?
Keep being you guys. Newrez is awesome. Thankful for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Until next time, again, thank you, David, for being part of this, and let us know any thoughts and comments below. See you.